When are you going to finish off your Twilight Zone videos? When are you going to finish off your Twilight Zone videos? Alright, you want me to finish my Twilight Zone videos? Well, here you go. Get ready to be rewarded for your patience. Here are my top 10 favorite Twilight Zone episodes of Season 5. Number 10, A Kind of Stopwatch. An avid talker of a man is given a stopwatch that can stop time, except he's not affected by it. He then abuses the power of this watch to do whatever he wants, but he soon discovers a big disadvantage to the watch. This is not only one of the most famous episodes of the final season, but of all time. It's been parodied several times, with Johnny Bravo and The Simpsons being ones that come into my head. I just love the idea of this episode. Could you imagine what it would be like if you had the power to stop time except yourself? That would be awesome! I could finally flip off the governor of Illinois, and he couldn't do a thing about it. I could finally sneak into Area 51 and see what they're hiding in there. Finally, I can go up to a woman I like and take her clothes off and get away with... I think I've said enough. Anyway, add on the great twist ending if you got yourself a good episode to start the list off. Number 9, Mr. Garrety and the Graves. In the Old West, a man comes to a town and says he can bring the dead back to life. The citizens believe him, and he makes a lot of money off of it. It's revealed that he's a con man, and he really can't raise the dead. Or can he? Finally, a comedic episode of this show that's done right. In this episode, this show took a crack at dark comedy and did it well. A lot of the jokes are really sadistic, but they're done in a clever way that you find yourself laughing about it. For example, there's one joke where Mr. Garrety brings back a man's dead wife, but the man pays Mr. Garrety to put her back in the grave. It's humor like this that make this episode humorous. I also love how Mr. Garrety thinks. He's one smart con man that is able to trick people very well, and he knows what to say to convince them. This is just a great example of the show taking a crack at comedy and not making a fool of itself. Number 8, Stopover in a Quiet Town. A married couple wakes up to find out they're in a town they don't recognize, and they're the only ones in the said town. This leads to a twist ending that is bound to make your jaw break a hole in the floor. With Season 5, the show's writers were starting to run out of ideas for episodes, so they had to resort to old ideas and combining them together. This episode seems like a combo of Time Enough at Last and 2. It's got that creepy atmosphere of isolation and the fear of being alone. However, this episode is fresh because of a couple who interact with each other. I'm drawn into their relationship, and I want to see them find some help. I kind of saw the ending coming, but that just shows that I've been watching this show too much. However, even though I predicted it, the ending was still clever and shows this show was good at its trademark twists. Nothing else to say, but don't ride the train. Number 7, The Last Night of a Jockey. A former jockey has been banned from racing and is down on his luck. He wishes that he wants to be big, and he'll soon find out that size truly does matter. This one couldn't be more simple. It's just a short guy who's in his hotel room talking to himself, to the unseen person who can grant him his wish. However, Mickey Rooney is the star of this episode, and he shines in it. As a fan of Rooney, I'm used to him being goofy in movies like Pete's Dragon and It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. So, this episode is a huge contrast for me. Seeing Rooney in a serious role just shows how great of an actor he truly is. You believe every pain and misery he's going through, and you feel sorry for him. Plus, the ending truly is a tragic one. It wasn't a good idea for me to start my day with this episode. It was that bitter. However, it's really well made with the little it has, and this is an underappreciated episode that I think more fans of this show should see. Number 6, The Encounter. A young Japanese man is stuck in an attic with an American World War II veteran. The tension rises as the two of them get closer and closer to having their own personal war with each other. This is an episode that doesn't air on TV that much. Oh, come on! So the American says the J word a few times. It may be offensive, but that's how people talked back then. Americans are such wussies. Anyway, this episode is a suspense lover's paradise. It's great watching these two men starting out with a casual friendship, but then they slowly become bitter rivals who are full of hate. This episode is also notable for a young George Takei playing the Japanese man. There's one point in this episode where he tells the story of his father, and he goes nuts. It's a great scene that shows George's acting talent. Plus, seeing as how I'm a big fan of the Japanese culture, it's great seeing a show tell a World War II story from the Japanese point of view. There's not much more I can say about this episode. If you can track it down, check it out. Number 5, Night Call. An old lady keeps getting calls from a mysterious man she doesn't know, and it's driving her nuts. She eventually traces the call and makes a shocking discovery. This episode was one of the few times I almost cried when watching something. I just loved the build-up in this episode. You want to know who's calling the lady, and when you do find out, you think it's a twist ending, but no. This episode then hits you with another twist that leaves you feeling rather uncomfortable. Dang it! I wish I could talk more about the ending, but I don't believe in spoilers, so you viewers are lucky. There's nothing more I can say about this episode. Just an underrated episode of this show that I'm surprised more people don't talk about. Number 4. Number 12 looks just like you. In a future society, there comes a time in everybody's life where they have to choose 2 different model choices and get a brain transplant into a different body, but one teenager doesn't want to go through with it. This episode seems like a combo of It's a Good Life and Eye of the Beholder. It's a future society where conformity is glorified and nobody can say anything about it. This is one of those episodes that makes me fear that this is the direction our society is heading. I don't want to have to get my brain transplanted into one of 2 model bodies. Screw that! I'm proud of who I am. Mirrors aren't, though. Plus, I really get behind the main character. I love how she doesn't want to fall into society's conformity, and she believes in individualism. And, as cheery and bright as the ending might be, it only makes it all the more creepy and disturbing. Bottom line, this is another great episode and one of the highlights of the show's final season. Number 3. The Masks. An old man is on the verge of dying, and his final wish is to have his children wear masks for the rest of the night. This is one of the most popular episodes of the whole show, and for good reason. It deals with greed and how greed consumes more than just our minds and feelings. I also love the old man character. He's the master of insults against his children. His insults are so thought out and creative that I can't even remember any of them. You think this would be a negative trait for this character, but he's just being honest, and it's hilarious. I mean, if I had kids that were cruel like the kids in this episode, then I would insult them too. Nothing else more I can say about this episode, but it's a big must-see. Number 2. An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. Okay, I'm kind of cheating on this one, seeing as how it was a French short film that wasn't produced for this show. However, it aired a part of this show, so I'm counting it. During the Civil War, a Confederate spy is about to be hung by the Union Army at Owl Creek Bridge. However, the rope snaps and he makes his way for freedom. Or does he? I had to include this episode on the list because I love the short stories this episode is based on. It was one of the few stories that actually kept me awake in reading class. It's a story that's known for its twist ending, so it's tailor-made for this show. I also love how there is little dialogue in this episode, and it mostly lets the visuals tell the story. The river and the forest are beautiful and great to stare at, even if they're in black and white. I also like how exciting this episode is. It is all centered around the Confederate trying to get to freedom while the Union chases after him. It's really tense. This is another great episode of this show that none of the crew of the show have any involvement in. Oh, who cares? It's still great. Number 1. Living Doll. I know. Kind of predictable, but it's my favorite. Anyway, a mean stepdad is angry when he discovers his wife bought an expensive doll for her daughter. However, when the doll starts talking, he is in for one heck of a scare. I have nothing but great things to say about this episode. First of all, the acting is top notch. Telly Savalas plays a great a-hole of a dad. A little girl does a great job of showing a wide range of emotion. Plus, I'm also a fan of plotlines that deal with non-living things coming to life, and this is a great example of that because it could go either way. You don't know if the doll is really alive or if the guy is going insane. And finally, the reason this episode makes the top of my list is for June Foray's performance of Talking Tina. I can't believe it. My favorite voice actress in the Twilight Zone. This is an ultimate fan pleaser. June Foray gives quite possibly her most menacing performance ever. She's able to make Talking Tina sound both sweet and threatening at the same time. Every time I hear her say, "My name is Talking Tina, and I'm going to kill you," it always makes me shiver. Bottom line, Living Doll is my favorite episode from Season 5 of The Twilight Zone. And quite possibly my favorite episode of the whole show. There you go. I'm finally done with my Twilight Zone video series. It took me a while, but I finally got around to finishing it, and I hope it lived up to the hype. Now, since I did something positive this week, I have to do something negative next week. Well, what else is there for me to be angry about? I ranted on almost everything that ticks me off. I mean, it's not like Nick has made a new sitcom where Fred is the main star. Oh, sweet merciful heavens!